"You can't park here, ma'am. This lot's for VIPs or people with appointments." His voice was clipped, practiced. His eyes scanned her up and down, pausing longer than necessary on the worn-out sneakers and faded jeans, the plain t-shirt that had seen too many laundry cycles. She didn't argue, just gave a small nod. But her gaze drifted upward toward the top floor of the glass-paneled building, the place where money didn't need a name tag. She waited. 10 minutes later, a man stepped out of the building, tall, impeccably dressed, familiar to anyone who read financial magazines or watched the local news. He smiled and called out warmly, "Hey, baby, why didn't you text me you were here?" And just like that, her silence became its own kind of thunder. Sometimes all it takes is the wrong outfit, and the whole world pretends not to see you. That's what Naomi's mother used to say. Not out of bitterness, but with the calm clarity of someone who had long made peace with being overlooked. And on that summer day, when the heat rose off the concrete like ghost smoke, Naomi thought about those words again. She pulled into the parking lot slowly, her old Honda coughing just a little as she shifted into neutral. The car was a dull gray, sun-bleached on the roof, and peppered with the kind of scratches that came from grocery carts and careless doors in cheap neighborhoods. Naomi didn't mind. It ran. It had AC that half worked, and it got her where she needed to go. She parked near the main entrance, under a metal sign that read, "Guest parking, 2-hour limit." There were plenty of empty spots. Her fingers hovered over her phone. One message sent already. She figured he'd be down in 10 minutes, maybe less. She'd wait. No makeup. Her hair was pulled into a low puff, still damp from the morning spritz. A plain black tee that had softened with time. Jeans faded at the knees, and old sneakers with the soles beginning to peel. She didn't dress for show. She never had. She dressed for comfort, for breathing room. She rolled the windows halfway down and leaned back. That's when she saw him. White guy, early 20s, maybe 25 at most, walking with the stiff posture of someone trying to look busier than he really was, security uniform freshly pressed, sunglasses on. He was headed her way. She felt it before he spoke. That crawling awareness. The way people look at you like they've already made up their minds. "Ma'am," he said, tapping lightly on the window. "You can't park here." Naomi blinked. "I'm just waiting for someone. Won't be long." He shifted his weight. "This section's reserved for VIP guests or people with appointments. You'll need to move your vehicle." Naomi turned to glance at the sign again. "It says guest parking." "I'm a guest." "Right," he said, drawing out the word like he didn't quite buy it. "We've had issues in the past. Folks coming in just to loiter, walk around, not actually shopping." She looked at him then. Not hard, not angry, just looked. "So you think I'm here to loiter?" He didn't flinch. "I didn't say that." "You kind of did. Ma'am, if you're not here for an appointment, I'll have to ask you to relocate. There's public parking 2 blocks down." Her mouth felt dry. The air was thick, almost chewy with heat. She could feel it pressing behind her eyes. "I'm waiting for someone," she said again, slower this time. "He works here." But that didn't matter. She could tell. He wasn't listening. He had already written her off like she was one of those people. The ones who walked around expensive stores and didn't buy. The ones they followed through aisles just to make sure nothing got slipped into a purse. "We've had people say that before," he said, folding his arms. "It becomes an issue when they're still here an hour later and haven't stepped inside." There it was. The assumption baked into every word. She sat up straighter. Her hands were still on the wheel, knuckles pale. She could feel her pulse in her fingertips. "I don't owe you my schedule," she said quietly. "I'm just doing my job, ma'am." She hated how he said that. Ma'am. Like it was a badge of courtesy when really it meant, "I don't see you. I see what you represent." She could have argued. could have said a dozen things, but there was a weight to his posture, the kind of weight that made it clear he wasn't afraid of being wrong, because the system would always back him up. If she protested too much, maybe he'd call someone else. Maybe it would escalate. And then what? A news story? A cell phone video? Another black woman refusing to comply? She'd seen it before, on loop, on TV, on the timeline. So instead, she just nodded. "All right," she said. "I'll wait somewhere else." She pulled the gear shift into reverse, slowly, hands steady. But she didn't drive off. Just looped around the far end of the lot and came back to a different space. Still close enough to see the glass doors. Still in the heat, but in the shade now, beneath a dying jacaranda tree that hadn't bloomed since spring. She sat there, engine off, sweat collecting at the base of her spine. The man didn't follow. He'd done his part. That was enough for him. She checked her phone. One message. Almost down. 10 minutes. She exhaled, looked back toward the main entrance, and waited. The worst part, she thought, wasn't the insult. It wasn't even the assumption. It was how practiced he'd been, how easy. Like he did this all the time. Like the sight of someone like her, in that lot, in those clothes, didn't belong to the story he was hired to protect. People don't have to scream at you that you don't belong here. The way they look at you does all the work. Naomi had seen that look more times than she cared to count. It wasn't loud, wasn't obvious. It was subtle, smooth, like the hush that falls over a store when you walk in, and they're trying not to make it a scene. Like how a server at a high-end restaurant accidentally forgets your table twice before bringing you water. Like the woman in the hotel lobby who smiled at you, then dialed security as you passed. It didn't shake her anymore. Not visibly, anyway. There was something harder than anger, colder than shame. It was exhaustion, a kind of tired that sank into your bones and stayed there. Not because you gave up, but because you knew better than to keep fighting the same fight every day. The security guard's tone still lingered in her ears, matter of fact, like he was doing her a favor by letting her leave quietly. She sat still in the new spot under the jacaranda tree, watching the shimmer of heat rise off the blacktop. Her fingers drummed lightly on the steering wheel. Her jaw ached from clenching, even though she hadn't noticed she was doing it. A voice in her head said, "Just go," but another said, "No. Let him see you wait. Let him wonder." She turned on the radio and scrolled until she found something soft. A scratchy recording of Nina Simone filled the car. Her mother used to play this song when Naomi was little, when the rent was past due, when the fridge looked like a question mark, when all they had for dinner was rice and hope. She leaned back, letting her eyes rest for a second. And that's when a memory came. She was 14, first day of 9th grade. Her mother had surprised her with a pair of white Reeboks, brand new. The first real sneakers she'd ever owned that didn't come from the discount bin. Naomi remembered the way they felt on her feet. Clean, light, like possibilities. That day, she had walked into school tall, proud, until third period. "Naomi, can I speak with you?" Mr. Whitmore, her English teacher, had said in the hallway. His voice wasn't mean, but it wasn't warm either. In the office, the principal asked her where she got the shoes. "My mom bought them," Naomi said, confused. He asked her twice more, in different ways, then told her to sit and wait. She stayed there nearly an hour. Eventually, someone called her mother at work. And it was over, just like that. No apology, no explanation, just a glance from the secretary on the way out, tight-lipped, like she'd been let off the hook. That was the first time Naomi learned the rules were different for girls who looked like her, especially when they looked like they had something they weren't supposed to, and it had followed her ever since. Hotels, restaurants, boutiques, They all had their own versions of the glance, the pause, the cold shoulder. She'd gone to a job interview once and seen the receptionist's eyes flicker when she walked in, then watched the hiring manager pretend the position had just been filled. She knew what was happening. She just got better at acting like she didn't. Now, sitting in the car, Naomi thought, what if I'd dressed different today? Worn a blazer, done my hair, put on the earrings Malcolm bought me last Christmas? Would he have said anything at all? And would that even matter? She lowered the volume and closed her eyes, letting the thick summer air press in. Sweat slid from her temple down her neck. A horn blared somewhere far off. The mall's sliding doors kept opening and closing, letting in people who looked like they belonged. If I leave, she whispered, I'm telling him he's right, that I don't belong here. But if I stay, I have to feel this. I have to sit in it. It wasn't a decision she made all at once. It was quieter than that. A breath held longer than usual. A hand resting on the gear shift that never moved. She stayed, not out of pride, not even defiance. She stayed because some part of her needed to reclaim the space she'd been pushed out of, even if it was just a parking spot. Above her, the mirrored windows of the building glinted in the sunlight. Somewhere behind them, behind all that glass and air conditioning, someone was walking toward her. Someone who knew her story. Not just the one people assumed when they saw her. He knew where she'd come from. He knew her name. There are moments, just 10 minutes, even less sometimes, that shift the air around you, reorder the space you're allowed to take up. Not because you've changed, but because someone else decided to see you differently. Naomi was still in the car when her phone buzzed. On my way down. That's all it said. 5 words. She stared at the screen for a second longer than necessary, as if the message might morph into something else, or maybe offer comfort. But it didn't need to. She already knew what it meant. She glanced toward the front entrance again, where people moved in and out without hesitation. Shoppers with glossy bags and expensive shoes. Nobody looked her way. Why would they? Her eyes drifted upward, tracing the sleek silver panels of the building all the way to the top floors. Somewhere behind that glass, he was walking to the elevator, maybe grabbing his keys off a desk, maybe fixing his cufflinks out of habit. She could see it in her mind. She turned the music off and waited. 3 minutes passed, then 5, then she saw him. Malcolm Rowe didn't need an introduction. He had a presence, the kind you couldn't teach or fake. People recognized it before they recognized his face. The way he moved through space like it owed him nothing and everything all at once. Tall, broad, sharply dressed in a navy sport coat and dark slacks. No tie. Always clean, always a touch casual. He hated looking like he was trying too hard. His skin glowed deep bronze in the sun. Beard neat, short. A silver watch on his wrist caught the light with each step. The guard near the entrance noticed too. Naomi saw his posture shift. A straightening. A flicker of curiosity. But Malcolm didn't pause for him. He looked straight ahead until he found her. And when he did, the whole mood of the parking lot changed. A smile curved slowly across his face. The kind of smile that had history in it. That knew the shape of her without needing to be reminded. He walked up to the car, leaned down, resting one hand on the window frame. Hey, baby, he said softly, like they were back home in the kitchen, not in public, under judgment. Why didn't you let me know you were here? I told you to park right up front. Naomi said nothing, just tilted her chin toward him, letting her forehead meet his lips. It was such a simple thing, a familiar thing. But outside that context, outside their world, it sounded like thunder. Malcolm stepped back, opened the car door for her with one hand, while the other rested lightly on her shoulder. He moved with the kind of ease that said, I do this every day. I know this woman. She is mine and I am hers. Naomi slid out of the car slowly, brushing her jeans with both palms. She looked at the security guard, who was now standing rigid, trying too hard to appear casual. His face had that tight, white smile, forced friendliness pasted over stunned recognition. "Is everything all right here, ma'am?" he asked, voice higher than before. Malcolm turned to him, not unkind, but cool. His tone was dry as the pavement. "She good?" "Yes, sir. Just a routine check. Nothing serious." Naomi let the silence breathe, just long enough for discomfort to settle in the guard's gut. Then she met his gaze, calm and steady. "Am I parked okay now?" she asked. Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. The words were enough. The guard swallowed, nodded. "Yes, absolutely. You're fine." "Good to know." She didn't smile. Not really. Just lifted the corner of her mouth the way someone might, when they've been waiting a long time for a moment like this. Malcolm put his hand on the small of her back, guiding her toward the front doors. He didn't look back. He never did when it wasn't worth it. But Naomi turned once, just enough to see the guard shifting his weight, rubbing the back of his neck like he was trying to explain the heat to himself. Funny thing about moments like this, they don't fix anything. They don't undo years of being second-guessed, doubted, underestimated. But they do give you something back. Something stolen long ago, piece by piece. Dignity, visibility, control. And maybe that was enough for now. Not all prejudice comes with volume. Some insults are quiet. So quiet, you almost think you imagined them. They slip into your bloodstream like whispers, settle deep in the body, and stay there. Unshouted, but unforgettable. Malcolm held the door open, and Naomi stepped into the cool hush of the mall's atrium. It smelled like wealth in disguise. Clean air with hints of leather, cologne, and just the right amount of lavender from the flower arrangements by the escalator. She didn't flinch. She didn't shrink. But she also didn't speak. Malcolm noticed. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm fine," she said, and meant it. But that didn't mean she wasn't holding something. He touched her elbow. "Do you want me to talk to someone?" "The manager." Naomi shook her head. "No, that's not what I want." "You sure? I don't need an apology. I don't want that man to get written up and start crying about how he didn't mean anything by it. I want him to remember how it felt when the story flipped. When the woman he dismissed became the woman everyone noticed." Malcolm nodded. He won't forget. They walked past a luxury shoe store. Sleek, mirrored, quiet inside. She remembered being there 6 months ago. Browsing alone. A white salesgirl had hovered behind her the whole time, asking, "Do you need help?" 3 times in 7 minutes. Then had followed her halfway around the store, pretending to reorganize heels. She hadn't bought anything. Not because she couldn't, but because she wouldn't. They passed the watch boutique, where a security guard once asked to check her bag before she even touched a display. The same store where a month later she'd stood beside Malcolm as he tried on a limited edition Rolex. And suddenly, she'd become ma'am and been offered champagne. She said nothing now. But Malcolm knew. He could feel her silence wasn't empty. It was full of names and places and moments. "I know this isn't the first time," he said gently. She looked at him. Her mouth twitched. "No, not by a long shot." There was a bench near the water feature, where koi moved lazily beneath glass. They sat. "I never told you about the Midtown interview," she said after a pause. "This was a few years ago. Startup company. Good position. I wore my hair out that day. Natural, full. They said I looked creative, which wasn't a compliment." Malcolm didn't interrupt. The woman interviewing me barely looked at my resume. Spent the whole time asking if I fit their culture. I didn't even finish my coffee after that. Just walked out. He reached for her hand. She let him. "I don't know why I never said anything," she murmured. "I do," he said, "because it was endless and exhausting. And sometimes, even sharing it made you feel like you were complaining. like you were asking for something people didn't think you deserved. Naomi rubbed her thumb along the side of his hand. Even when they smile, she said, you feel it. That question in their eyes. What are you doing here? Who let you in? He didn't answer. He didn't need to. It's like living in a house with invisible alarms, she said. You never hear them go off, but you feel the vibration. And after a while, you start walking quieter, speaking softer, laughing less. She leaned forward, elbows on knees, watching the fish below the glass. There's this moment, every time, just before someone opens their mouth. You already know what they're going to say. You already know they've decided you don't belong. And still, you smile. You make it easy for them. Malcolm was quiet. He didn't try to soothe her with words. He just sat in it with her. Let it stretch. She turned to him, eyes steady now. But today, she said, I didn't make it easy. No, he agreed. I didn't explain myself. Didn't apologize for being here. I waited. And you made him see you, Malcolm said. Maybe. Or maybe I just made him uncomfortable enough to remember. They stood as they passed a pair of women exiting the designer jewelry store. Naomi caught one of them glancing at her, then quickly away. She didn't flinch, just kept walking. I used to think I had to work twice as hard to be seen as half as good, she said. But now, I don't want to be good on their terms. What do you want? To stop carrying their shame like it's mine. They reached the elevator. Naomi pressed the button and faced the closed doors. Her reflection shimmered in the polished steel, calm, composed, resolute. That guard out there, she said. He'll forget my face, but he won't forget the moment, the feeling of realizing he was wrong. She smiled, not for anyone else, just for herself. And that's enough. Respect isn't a prize for the wealthy. It's not some ribbon handed out to people with gold cards and polished shoes. It's not earned by wearing a certain brand or speaking in a certain tone. Respect, Naomi believed, should come with breath, with being. But it had taken her years and 1,000 small humiliations to say that aloud. She didn't change the way she dressed after that day in the parking lot. She still wore her worn denim, her favorite canvas sneakers, the same soft cotton shirts she'd folded and refolded in the top drawer of their bedroom dresser. She didn't suddenly start curling her hair or adding pearls to her ears. The only thing she added was intention. She walked taller, not because she'd gained status, but because she'd stopped apologizing for having none. One quiet Sunday, sitting across from Malcolm on their porch, she sipped her coffee slowly and said, I keep thinking about that girl, the me from a few years back. She'd never have waited in that car. She'd have driven off. Malcolm didn't rush her. She would have thought, what's the point? Why make a scene? You didn't make a scene, he said. You made space. She nodded, her gaze steady on the horizon. I want to do something, she said. Not just for me, for girls like me. He raised an eyebrow. Girls who sit in cars? Girls who get told, with a smile, that they're not a good fit. Girls who walk into rooms full of possibility and shrink because no one ever told them they deserved to be there. Malcolm set his mug down. What are you thinking? I want to start a fund. Something small at first. Just enough to help them launch ideas, businesses, stories. Something they don't have to beg for, he said. Something they don't have to earn with a suit and a smile. They called it the Right to Stand Foundation. The name came to Naomi late one night, after she reread her journal from years ago. Pages filled with questions like, do I belong here? And how much do I have to change? Now, she wanted every young black woman, every girl with big dreams and a second-hand laptop, to know she didn't have to become someone else to be heard. The foundation began with 6 applications, then 22. By the end of the first month, Naomi had met more young women than she could count. Smart, stubborn, brave. Some wore heels, some wore boots. Some carried baby bags into the meeting rooms. All of them had fire in their eyes. And then came the invitation. A regional entrepreneurship forum was being held at the same luxury shopping center where it had all started. One of the panelists had dropped out last minute. Someone suggested Naomi. She said yes without hesitation. The morning of the event, she wore a navy dress, cotton, simple, unbranded, and a pair of white sneakers she'd owned since her early 20s. She tied her hair back the way she always did. No makeup, just moisturizer and a quiet confidence. She arrived early, walked through the front entrance without pausing. The same security guard was there. She saw him before he saw her. He stood straighter when he noticed her, blinked twice and looked away. There was no nod, no smile, just a flicker in his jaw, like he was bracing for something. But Naomi didn't flinch. She didn't slow down. She didn't feel the need to wave or glare or say a single thing, because the moment was no longer his. It was hers. Inside the event room, folding chairs were lined up in perfect rows. She set her laptop down, checked her notes, and watched young women file in. One of them wore a bright green head wrap and carried a sketchbook. Another had a baby on her hip and a resume in her other hand. Naomi stood in front of them and smiled. She talked about ownership, about dignity, about starting where you are, not where people think you should be. And she told them this: you don't have to be rich to be worthy. You don't have to dress a certain way, or speak a certain way, or pretend you've never struggled. Respect isn't a gift other people hand you. It's a birthright, yours, already. Later, when the panel was done and the crowd began to thin, Naomi stepped outside for air. The sun was softer now, brushing light across the pavement like it forgave something. As she walked back toward the exit, she glanced once at the guard still posted by the door. He didn't meet her eyes this time, but she smiled anyway. Not for him, not for revenge, just because she could. You don't need to be rich to be treated with respect. But somewhere along the way, this world forgot that. If you've ever been judged by your skin, your clothes, your silence, if you've ever walked into a room and felt like you had to earn your place in it, remember Naomi. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't beg to be seen. She just waited. And when the moment came, she stood. Share this story if you believe respect isn't a luxury, it's a birthright. Not a privilege for the few, but a promise to us all. We'll see you again in our next story, where another quiet moment might hold a powerful lesson. If this one moved you, don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the next truth waiting to be told.